The moment humiliation lands, it often arrives quietly, disguised as routine, wrapped in authority and rules. For Daniel Harris, it came at 37,000 feet above the ground, under the soft white lights of a first-class cabin where wealth whispered and judgment stared openly. He stood frozen in the aisle, his boarding pass trembling slightly in his hand, his 6-year-old son sleeping against his chest, unaware that his father's dignity was being stripped away in front of strangers. The flight attendant's expression was tight, practiced, and cold, and every eye around them felt like a verdict. Daniel had survived war zones overseas, years of sleepless nights as a single parent, and the silent grief of loss, but nothing had prepared him for the quiet cruelty of being made to feel like he didn't belong. If you believe kindness still matters in a world that often forgets it, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this exist because people still care about second chances. Daniel hadn't planned on flying first class. In fact, he never planned on flying at all. Life had taught him to plan less and endure more. 3 years earlier, his wife had died suddenly, leaving him with a small boy who asked questions Daniel didn't always know how to answer. Since then, every day had been about survival, routine, and doing the best he could with what little energy remained. He worked long hours as a structural engineer, taking overnight shifts whenever possible, saving every spare dollar for his son's future. When his father passed away, leaving behind a modest inheritance and a note that read, "Use this to rest, not to worry," Daniel decided for once to listen. He booked a first-class ticket for himself and his son, not as a luxury, but as a promise to finally breathe. The airport had been overwhelming, the crowds loud and impatient, the lines endless. Daniel carried his son through security, calming him with soft reassurances, his arms aching but his heart steady. He noticed the looks even then, people glancing at his worn jacket, his scuffed shoes, the faint scar near his temple that marked a past he never spoke about. He didn't mind. He had learned to walk through judgment the same way he walked through rain, head down, moving forward. Boarding was smooth, the cabin quiet and elegant, the seats wide and welcoming. Daniel carefully settled into his seat, buckling his son beside him, watching his chest rise and fall as sleep claimed him again. For a moment, peace washed over Daniel. He closed his eyes, breathing deeply, feeling something rare and fragile. Relief. Then the flight attendant stopped in front of him. The request was sharp and immediate. His ticket was questioned, the seat assignment scrutinized. The tone was firm, public, unnecessary. Daniel tried to explain, holding out his boarding pass, but the attendant's voice grew louder, drawing attention, pulling eyes from behind magazines and tinted glasses. She insisted there had been a mistake, that he couldn't possibly belong there, that economy class was where he should be. The implication hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable. "You don't look like one of us." Daniel felt heat rise in his chest, not anger but shame. He thought of his son, still sleeping, blissfully unaware of the moment shaping his memory. He stood slowly, careful not to wake him, apologizing even though he had done nothing wrong. The attendant gestured impatiently, and whispers rippled through the cabin. Some people looked away, others watched, entertained. No one intervened. As Daniel stepped into the aisle, clutching his child, the humiliation settled deep, pressing against old wounds. He thought of all the times he had swallowed his pride for survival, all the nights he sat awake worrying about bills, about being enough. This moment felt like confirmation of his deepest fear, that no matter how hard he tried, the world would always see him as less. What Daniel didn't know was that 60 seconds can change everything. As he moved toward the exit of the cabin, a man seated near the window leaned forward. He was older, well-dressed, his posture calm but alert. He had been watching silently, his eyes sharp, his presence grounded. He raised his hand, not hurried, not dramatic, just certain. The attendant paused, irritation flickering across her face as she turned toward him. The man asked for the boarding manifest. The request cut through the tension like a blade. The attendant hesitated, then complied, her confidence faltering as the pages were reviewed. The cabin grew quiet. The man scanned the list slowly, deliberately, then looked up, his gaze steady. He pointed to Daniel's name, clearly printed under first class. He then revealed who he was, not with arrogance, but with authority that needed no embellishment. He was the airline's senior board director, traveling incognito to assess service standards after a surge of customer complaints. The shift in the room was immediate and unmistakable. The flight attendant's face drained of color. Her posture changed, stiffening, her earlier confidence collapsing into panic. She stammered, attempting to explain, but the damage had already been done. The man stood, his voice calm but unyielding, stating that what he had witnessed was unacceptable, discriminatory, and deeply unprofessional. He reminded everyone that dignity was not a privilege earned by appearance, but a right. Daniel stood frozen, disbelief washing over him in waves. He hadn't expected defense. He hadn't expected justice. He had only expected to disappear quietly. The flight attendant turned toward Daniel then, her authority gone, replaced by desperation. She lowered herself, not physically alone but emotionally, her voice trembling as she apologized publicly, repeatedly. The image was searing. The same person who had humiliated him moments ago now begged for forgiveness, her career flashing before her eyes. Daniel felt nothing at first. Then he felt everything. He looked down at his son, still asleep, still trusting the world his father was building for him. Daniel realized then that this moment wasn't about revenge or validation. It was about breaking a cycle. He didn't need to crush someone to feel whole again. He nodded slowly, accepting the apology, not because it erased the pain, but because he refused to let bitterness define him. The man from the board nodded in return, respect clear in his eyes. Daniel was guided back to his seat, this time with care, with deference, with an unspoken acknowledgement of wrong. As the plane took off, Daniel stared out the window, the city shrinking below him. His heart pounded, not with triumph, but with release. For the first time in years, he felt seen, not as a burden, not as a mistake, but as a man who had endured and still stood. The rest of the flight passed quietly. A new attendant checked on him often, offering warmth that felt genuine. Other passengers smiled at him, some nodding in silent apology. One woman left a handwritten note wishing him strength. Daniel read it slowly, folding it carefully into his pocket like a fragile gift. When they landed, the man from the board approached Daniel one last time, thanking him for his grace, telling him that change often begins with moments like these. Daniel simply nodded, holding his son's hand as they walked toward the terminal. Outside the airport, the sun was bright, the air fresh. Daniel knelt to his son's level as he woke, asking if he had slept well. His son smiled, oblivious to everything, safe and happy. Daniel smiled back, realizing that sometimes the world does bend, not because we demand it, but because we remain human when it matters most. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness can still ripple outward in powerful ways, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep stories like this alive. Before this story ends, we have one special request. Please comment below with a single word that represents what this story made you feel. Your words matter more than you know. As Daniel walked forward, hand in hand with his son, he carried something lighter than luggage, lighter than fear. He carried proof that dignity can be reclaimed, that humility can be stronger than power, and that sometimes, when the world tries to push you down, It only takes 1 minute for everything to change.